welcome to the 27th Annual Arpa Film Festival, the Visual Effects Masterclass, presented by Roger Kupelian. I will be your host for this segment. My name is Christine, and it is an honor for me to be here with you and to be working with Roger again. You will soon find out that this is a mini-series webisode. For a few of the episodes I had narrated, which I was super excited and proud to be a part of. For those of you who don't know, Roger is a renowned cinematic artist with nearly 30 years of experience in Hollywood. He has made significant contributions to major film projects, including Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings Trilogy, Clint Eastwood's Flags of Our Fathers, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, and the original Space Jams, just to name a few. It is an honor for me to invite Roger Kupelian to the stage.
Chris, thank you. We're done?
Yes.
For now, right, okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. And this is supposed to be a much bigger, longer presentation of a series that I'm going to do on the masterclass of making this project, but because we have to watch 2 webisodes, 10 minutes each, and also do a Q&A with my producing partner, Peter Balawanyan, who's on his way over, stuck in traffic, where I'm going to keep it a little shorter, more condensed, as sort of an introductory, and talk about the journey of this project. So without much further ado, let's begin. I call this presentation the magic envelope. And it really is about, not just about visual effects, but it's about achieving your passion project with hybrid filmmaking, thinking outside the box, using different methods to achieve a goal that you normally probably would not have been able to achieve unless you adapted. And that is the magic envelope. I'm going to talk more about that magic envelope later, but that's it in your minds. But before I do, we're going to watch the first webisode, which was also, I believe, nominated, or maybe it was definitely being streamed here. And this is episode 3. It's a 7-part series, 10 minutes each, meant to be seen over the web. This was done to be seen on the internet. So when you notice that there's a certain kind of intensity to it and structure to it, that's what it was meant for. So without much further ado, let's get on and watch a film.
At the edge of Rome, at the gates of Persia, a king is about to do something that will break the world apart. The king, Durtat, has just discovered what to his mind is a Christian spy. The man, Gregory, was only just yesterday his closest confidant and healer. Today, he kneels before the king as an unrepentant Christian, refusing to bow to the king's own pagan gods. Gregory never hid his beliefs from the king. He did hide something else, however. Gregory hid his true identity, that his father was a spy working for the Persians, a spy that murdered Durtat's father, the king of Armenia. Kill the king, and we'll make you the new king, they said. But unfortunately for the assassin, it was not to be. The assassin and his family were killed while trying to escape. Only one boy survived, Gregory. That's right, this Gregory. Durtat was already in a tough spot, and this was the last thing he needed. To have his best friend and confidant exposed as the son of the man who destroyed his family. Diocletian is the Emperor of Rome. He has learned about the assassination of the Armenian king. The exile, Tırtat, is now under his protection. Tırtat is trained in the ways of the Roman court. He becomes a legendary warrior in Diocletian's military. He's also a devout pagan who sees Christianity starting to take hold, especially to the land's east, where his destiny lies. Also hiding out in the eastern reaches of the Roman Empire is Gregory. Diocletian finds out that the Persian monarchy is in chaos. Their hold on Armenia is weakening. And now is the time to send one of his most powerful warriors to retake that kingdom. Tırtat is given the support of the empire, but not a full army, as this would be an actual declaration of war by Rome. As word gets around that the rightful king of Armenia is returning to take his throne, Gregory ventures out to meet up with Tırtat. Gregory soon catches up with the expeditionary army. The evangelist presents himself as a man of learning, in service to the returning king. Men of learning were very rare back then, so this was valuable to Tırtat. For reasons known to himself, Gregory keeps his identity secret. The road is a bloody one, and Tırtat is getting nowhere. He has to earn the trust of the local warlords. This is where Gregory comes in, with his knowledge of the culture and languages. Christian missionaries like Gregory were trained in any available knowledge of the time, which included the arts of healing. Gregory soon becomes part of Tırtat's inner circle. Tırtat turns a blind eye to Gregory's evangelizing. The man is too valuable in this enterprise, and what was one more god so far away from Rome's persecutions? The tides of battle begin to turn for the returning king. Tırtat is reunited with one other person, his sister, who also escaped the assassination attempt on his family. With Gregory and now the princess at his side, he fights on with renewed purpose. Victorious and crowned by the Roman Empire as their man in Armenia, Tırtat has gained a country and now sits on his father's throne. But there's a hidden wound festering, a secret that will throw everything into disarray. The Emperor Diocletian pressures Tırtat to keep persecuting Christians within his realm, knowing many Roman Christians are fleeing east. The king realizes that his pet Christian is not popular with the established pagan order of the country. Gregory is unabashed in his faith, and his chief rival, the high priest Artsan, wants him called out as a traitor. But Gregory is valuable to the king, both on a political and personal level. Gregory is given one more chance, a way out by Turtat. Sacrifice to the king's god and prove your loyalty. As a devout Christian, he refuses, and he is imprisoned. Once this happens, his rivals come forward with the accusation they dared not bring before, that this is none other than the son of the assassin. Now, Turtad is in a bind. If he kills Gregory, he will be creating a martyr. If he lets him go, he will look weak. His advisors remind him that if the assassin had not been killed, and instead been given the crown by the Persians, Gregory, not Turtad, would now be the heir of Armenia. Gregory is tortured day and night to have him renounce his faith. He endures. Finally, short of having him brutally killed off, Turtat condemns him to be imprisoned in a deep pit. Down here, the evangelist will suffer in darkness and struggle with madness. The once esteemed companion of the king, now reduced to a condemned prisoner. Little do Turtad or those around him realize that they have unleashed forces beyond their control. Forces that will turn the kingdom upside down. There will be blood, and holy water will flow when we continue next time on Warrior Saints.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me talk a little bit about, I'm sure some of you know me already, but I'm going to do this for people who may not know me. Some of my qualifications, okay? Over 30 years on movies, TV, whatever you can think of, graphic novels, stuff in print. First digital film I worked on was Space Jam. The biggest trilogy I've worked on is the Lord of the Rings Trilogy, and that was in New Zealand. And I've worked on a variety of different projects, including one of my pocket favorites, which is the Denzel Washington starred Joel Coen film, Tragedy of Macbeth. I'm a big fan of Shakespeare. And you can see that there's been a variety of things, a variety of projects that I've been on that have inspired me and have informed my choice of methods to try and tell the story that you saw part of. Now there's 7 of these episodes. The idea is to do 3 or 4 seasons. All of us have that passion project that we want to do, especially filmmakers, but any artist, anybody. Usually it involves a story that was implanted in you from a very young age. In my case, it was a kid in Sierra Leone, West Africa. And there's my dad teaching me the poem of Vartan Mamegonian, one of our national heroes. Now, going from that to realizing the visuals, to realizing the final project, telling the final story, that process is part of this lecture for a good reason, because I think that you cannot just talk about, well, this is a technique I used, that's a technique I used. You have to talk about how to get there, and before you figure out the how, you got to ask yourself, why? There is no wrong answer. Why are you doing this project? This is a huge undertaking. And the only reason that people embark on these huge undertakings is because they're young and didn't know nothing. They didn't realize how much effort and time it was going to take to get from point A to point Z, usually when people start. So before you start on something that's going to be fundamentally altering and changing your life, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Why would people watch it? Why am I going to put myself through a lot of hardship? There's going to be great moments and there's going to be very difficult moments. There is no wrong answer. If it's going to be because you want to make lots of money, then be honest about that. Because I want to make lots of money. That will inform the kind of project you want to tell later. If it's because you have maybe a spiritual reason or a cultural reason, be very honest about that. Actually, there is one wrong answer when you lie to yourself as to why you're doing this. A lot of us are very good at that. So the first thing you have to do is really examine deep down inside what you're about to set out to do and why you're going to do it, why it's so important, and if you're ready to pay the price to do it. So first you have to define your project. If you can stand in an elevator to some producer who doesn't even know who you are, and you can do the elevator pitch and say what your project is about in about 1 or 2 sentences, you're ahead of the game. A lot of people can't even do that. Any big film you've seen, any project that got made, any book that was written, someone can sit down and say, here I can tell you 1 or 2 sentences what this is about. And you as a producer or a studio can tell me if you want to get behind this or not, or as an audience if you're interested. Case in point, open up Netflix, go through the list of shows, look at the descriptions. By reading those descriptions, you'll see what the show's about, and if you're going to be interested or not. Before the filmmakers made their project, they had to define it. So that's called the log line. And again, I'm going into the basics because part of this whole Masterclass project is to introduce people who are not familiar with some of these terms to these terms. And you'd be surprised that some people have been doing this for quite a while and they still haven't figured this out. And then come up with a catchphrase. It's a fun thing. Come up with a catchphrase for the poster. If you had a poster for your project, what would that fun little catchphrase be at the bottom? That's called the tagline. Come up with these 2 things before you do anything, before you shoot anything, before you write anything else. Now, I got to tell you something else too. This is a very special time today. It's a very special time for me to be standing here today. I'll tell you why. See, that's me over there on the left, in New Zealand. In 2002, this guy got an invitation from this very film festival to come and present, for the first time ever, a teaser based on the project that I just showed you. That was 22 years ago. That's how long it took me. So today, I'm completing the circle. I'm here presenting this project. And I'm saying thank you. Thank you to the film festival. Thank you that you've introduced me to so many of the people that I'm working with right now. People that have become my friends, like brothers and sisters to me, that I'm working with. There is no way I can ever repay that except to stand up here and do the presentation. So let me show you some of the stuff we did. In New Zealand 2002, I prepared this teaser that was going to be shown at the film festival, and it kind of pushed me to even define my project further. You can see that I'm using a New Zealand cast, the reason this looks kind of blurry and so on is because, back then, I'm shooting it on like mini digital video. We didn't have digital cameras the way we have them now. So you can even see my project has been an evolution of technology. So here I'm working with all the different techniques that I'm going to use, crowd duplication, matte paintings, all the different techniques I'm going to be using later. These are actual Persian guys in New Zealand playing Persian soldiers. So So in 2002, I came and did this. In 2004, I went back and I shot some more. When I came back to LA, formed a studio with my brother and brother-in-law. And one of the first things we did for the project was we did storyboard animatics. That's when you take storyboards and animate them out to some sound. There's actual sound to all this, but I'm not playing it right now so I can get through it. And this is the actual scene that we just saw in episode 3, where Gregory's finally exposed and the pagans don't like him and they want to throw him in the pit. For those that don't know what a storyboard animatic does, it's almost like you really get to define the timing and the story before you have to actually go out and film anything. It cuts down on the cost. But there's still a problem with the project at this point. I don't think the project knows what it is yet because it's so overwhelming for me. This whole historic topic is so overwhelming. It's so big. Any historic topic that you do, you gotta pick one thing that you're gonna focus on. Otherwise, the scope is just overwhelming. So here we are trying to figure it out. And obviously, the bigger the project is, the more expensive it's gonna be. We also shot another teaser in 2008. Now we got costumes. We're shooting against a green screen. Laurel Canyon stage is down in the valley. I'm starting to work with some of the same people I'm going to be working with for the rest of the life of this project. So we shoot a lot against green screen. I've got people training people on how to combat. Martin Yernazian was our first cinematographer that worked on this, an Armenian from Argentina. Every time somebody walks into this project, they affect the look and they affect the story. Now, from an artist standpoint, that's great. You want to collaborate with other artists and other creatives. From a producerial standpoint, that's problematic. Because when you have other producers coming on board who may not understand or share your vision, they're going to sidetrack you. That's going to lead to a very long development process. So this is a teaser that we shot in 2008. And we put this online. This was kind of like our big reveal to the world. We were raising money, we were doing fundraisers. One of the biggest expenses in this project were the costumes. Anytime you do a period piece, costumes are going to be one of your major challenges. Thank you. That's a good word. Challenge is putting it lightly, but yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the point is, it's the costumes and the environment that they're in. You have to create a world, and you can never let go of the illusion, otherwise the audience is taken out of it. Let's talk about the magic envelope again. In 2008, one of the kids of actually the costume designer's child, Mauro Parian's child, Arthur Parian. Mauro's our costume designer for the project, one of them. Her husband, Levon, is also in the project as an actor, and their son, Arthur, broke his piggy bank. He gave me the entire contents of his piggy bank in that magic envelope so I could have that money to help finish the project. No pressure, right? That was in front of a whole bunch of people too. That was during one of our fundraising events. So there was a public spectacle where Roger Kupelian got handed the magic envelope. Now you have to complete this. You are on a bound. So while we're trying to go through this whole development process, I pivot. I said, you know what? I want people to see my vision for this project. I'm not content to have this meeting with this person and that meeting with this person. Lead you down this path, lead you another path. So we did the first graphic novel, War Gods, which, funny enough, was first published in Spanish before it was published in English. This was from a grant given to me by the AGBU. I was working with Sam Simonian at that time, and he made it possible through the AGBU. So we got our first graphic novel. For those of you that are not familiar, it's right here. I have a copy you can peruse. What this graphic novel did, it's basically a comic book, using the visuals that already existed from my project, because I had a ton of visuals. It laid out my story and it laid out my vision for the first part, the first story arc of my project, which was the 301 AD, Christianization of Armenia, and so on. That's actually the book that I presented to Mel Gibson when I met with him to pitch the project. I had that one completed, and I had the rough for the second one, because I wanted to cement my rights to the intellectual property. I wanted to make sure that I did something concrete nobody could take away. Went on a book tour. This is in Toronto at the Pomegranate Film Festival, which our project is also going to be shown in, I think, a little bit later this year. They're figuring it out, but this was back in 2012. So I'm out there spreading the word. I took the show on the road, and people were really excited. I don't think anyone's really encountered something like this before for this subject matter. We also did it in, the capital of all Armenians, in Glendale, the Glendale Library. I had help again from the AGBU. That was very good, and some of the other people you may or may not recognize. And here's me presenting it. Now the man you see right there is one of my longtime collaborators on the slide, Eli Jarrett. More about him later. 2014, we got some funding, and this is the second trip to Armenia. My goal was to shoot a lot of this project in Armenia because you actually get more bang for your buck. This is the Armenia crew. We filmed in Armenia. We filmed in Los Angeles. We filmed in, New Zealand originally. But as far as the footage you're looking at, it was Los Angeles and Armenia. And the person standing there next to me, that barbarian, that's my brother. He really wanted to be in it. He was in the first footage in 2008. He says, I want to play a Persian this time. So we made him into a barbarian, so there he is. Very good crew, very hardworking. Armenia presented some technical equipment challenges, but I was able to do 30 cavalry, 20 infantry, fully clothed, for a number of days, including a bunch of pickups for our other main actors that we couldn't fly them out to Armenia, so we got doubles to play them from the back, from the side. For probably what it would have cost me to rent one cavalry dude and insurance over here. So there was a lot of potential. But unfortunately, what happened with the project back then, as happens with a lot of personal passion projects, it got a little sidetracked. Again, I don't think it really understood what it wanted to be. That's always a problem for projects. It didn't have the heart yet. So we can shoot as much footage as we want, but what is it really about? And why would I as an audience, if I step outside myself, why would I want to watch this? Okay, great, it's about Armenians, so what? So that's 2014, here we are shooting, and I'm employing a lot of techniques, crowd duplication and so forth, and you can see part of Mount Ararat in the background. We also do something else. It's black box photography, or the black void. I realized that I don't want everything to be green screen, because if everything's green screen, that increases the amount of visual effects I have to use. I say, you know what, we don't have time. We have all these characters that I gotta get through, we have a very low budget, we only have this space for a certain amount of time. This is done at Minassian Studios. Shahan Minassian, related to Sylvia, who's been very good to us, by the way. Both Sylvia and Shahan have been amazing. And so Sean provides his studio at a very, very good rate, and even shows up and helps us do a bunch of stuff. And so this is how we film it. And then when you film in the black void, then what I do is I go in and I fill in parts of the space. I add windows, I add statues, I add tiles on the floor to really try and sell that these guys are just in a very dark and moody place. Now, people have commented on, well, your project's a little on the moody side. Well, that's for a reason, because we shot in the black void. And there was one of the choices made to save money and get a certain stylistic look. Here we are in the hills of Malibu in 2014 and 110 degree weather. Yes, tempers did flare, and it was miserable to be out there, but we couldn't have done some of those outdoor shots with our actors. It's actually sitting there looking at camera unless we did that. So we had to figure that out. A lot of actors ended up playing different parts. So, if you look very closely, you'll be like, it's an ensemble cast. It's like SNL, they're playing all these different parts. 2015, Warrior Saints. I use, again, existing visual material. I get new visual material, and we do a Kickstarter, I paint 100 unique covers because I'm a map painter, I'm an illustrator, so that's my strength. So what I say is, hey, if you will give me a certain amount of money through my Kickstarter campaign to help me raise money to publish my second graphic novel, I'll give you a unique cover that's all yours. I had to paint over 100 of them. And they helped me raise some of the money. We did a Kickstarter, and success. We got our second graphic novel done. Now, what's happening here is, why am I bringing up all this stuff? Because I'm building my fortress right now, brick by brick. I'm not just walking into a studio and saying, oh, please fund my project, because I realize they're not going to. So this was another brick, graphic novel number 2. Second part of the story. So whenever you watch the 7 episodes, these kind of cover the whole arc. Here I am giving it to Koch Vartan himself. Vartan Mamigoni was played by my artist buddy, Dora Arzuyan. Funny, we were trying to find someone to play this guy that I've been painting my whole life. And I had a digital painting of Vartan in battle. And we were looking for him. And we did all this casting and so on and trying to find him. Like, we're just not finding the guy. He's right next door to our office. He's got a little painting studio. They're like, what about the guy next door? He comes over, puts a helmet on, and I'm like, that's the guy. He was right next to me. So here I am giving him his copy, his personalized copy. I think he was more surprised than anybody else, and I think Sarkis can affirm to that. The fact that we actually got this done, he was like, whoa. Because it's been a long time. 2008 to now, that's a while. People change. The involvement of Serge Tankian in the project. Serge came aboard quite early in 2007 when he saw that I created this mood wall. And Vibe Barbarian, who's also on the cover of this book right here, and also plays the evil, well, I'm saying evil, but it depends on your point of view. I like to say that because it's Bahe, he's my buddy. He's the sweetest guy in the world. Plays the high priest. And you see more of him in episode 4, and I recommend you go to Patreon and watch all the episodes. So Serge came on board to do the music, and Serge would promote, help us do videos to help us go raise money and so on and so forth. So that was always good. Now, the reason I bring this up too is I've done 3 music videos for Serge. Every time I do a music video for him, I do a little bit of a different technique. The last music video we did, we employed a certain amount of techniques, which by the way got an award at this very same film festival. Now when I'm talking about me being umbilically tied to Arpa Film Festival, there's a reason for that. Okay, so we won Best Music Video, and we started employing certain techniques. There was another evolution in our approach. Again, you can see us doing the storyboards, very crucial. When I do the extended masterclass, I will get into storyboards and I'll get into all the different techniques in a specific way, but right now I just want to give you an introduction. Here's Eli with the different cameras we're using. Eli actually owns those cameras and he rents them out to the production. And we used a combination of live actors, digital actors, and miniature actors. Shot against the green screen, using all these different techniques. Crowd duplication. I made a lot of the props myself because I couldn't afford to pay someone to do it. And then we had another person get involved. Arman Mukherjian from Armenia, he's a director, visual effects, CG guy. He did the digital doubles. So each character had digital doubles, real people, and miniature people. And also my daughters were involved. My youngest played one of the characters. And the reason she agreed to do it is because she saw how stressed out I was trying to find somebody. She said, Dad, I did it because I didn't want you to be stressed out. So she played the little one. Our character, Adam and Eve character's surviving child, basically. So you can see here that we're now using a lot of miniatures. Because I'm like, listen, I want to get a certain look. I also grew up in a time when you were watching a lot of miniatures and models, and I really love that look. I want to see how much practical effect we can use, combine it digitally, and seamlessly blend it into a combination, that hybrid look where you keep the audience guessing at all times. Is that real? Is that CG? Is that mechanical? Here I'm creating the evolution of the serpent from the garden.
I wanted to get my hands dirty with these projects because there's so much digital, there's so much AI, there's so much this, there's so much of that. I said, you know what, I want to go back and I want to mold this with my hands. And that's one of the reasons why I chose this approach. Now, you may notice that I brought certain things here. You've been watching them probably. There's a bridge to your dreams. And then there's the piece of styrofoam, one of the most important things I've ever found to help in my production. You start from something raw and you mold it into whatever you want, right? So I used a lot of this found styrofoam people usually throw away. You get like a hot little wire knife and you cut it and mold it and sculpt it. This particular bridge is supposed to represent the Melvian Bridge. We used it in our show, and it was made by Vanna, who was just starting out that time as a fabricator. Really beautifully done. Here's a helmet, because we had miniature people too in that production. And there's some other stuff. The reason I wanted to bring this to you and show you is I wanted to show you that there's an evolution. You start off with something raw. It's unformed. And this is the process of forming it into that bridge from you to wherever it is you're going to get to. So here you see how some of those effects were combined. If you're a fan of the original Star Trek, we were trying to go for some of that look too, the optical effects that they would go for. The idea of having their faces glow was Armand's idea from Armenia. So you have to be open to collaboration. That was a very good idea. And of course, we do believe in adhering to strict rules of filming. So even our miniature actors got a break. We made sure everybody had regular coffee breaks. Adam and Eve. Okay. So for my project coming up now, there were certain techniques that I started evolving and incorporating. Every time we do a project, there was another technique that would come into the puzzle. Black box or black void photography. Obviously, you need storyboards and key art. I'm used to doing that. That's what I do in the film industry. Miniatures, for me, was a revolution. We obviously use green screen, live on location, and digital effects. All of this now had been used for Serge's video, and I've used it before. So now I had the how. I knew there was a technique. But, what about the why? I read a book to find out why this project would be important to people. I'm one of those people that likes to ask why people did things. It's not just enough for me to talk about a historical topic or an event or even the political situation that's going on right now. I want to know why people think the way they do, because then it helps me understand them. I'm not judging them as much. I'm trying to understand them. It also makes me a better storyteller. So I want to find out how they lived, what they thought, what pressures they were under, why they made those choices. You hear all these kinds of theories of why certain kings did this and certain whatever did that. But why? Why did they do that? They're people just like us. What made them do that? And how did those choices lead to the world we live in right now? Because we're all thinking about that right now with all that's going on. This is a book called The History of Private Life that I read. It talks about private life, the way people lived, the way people thought from pagan Rome to Byzantium. And that book had been on my shelf for a while. I'm like, why didn't I read this before? So I went back, did a ton of research before I did anything else. And that's how this project was reborn. Another piece of advice I got, and now if you're thinking about doing something, keep this in mind. Using the radio play method. A lot of people try to go for visuals right away. But if you can listen to it, play out, if you can hear it, with music, with sound effects, and it conjures those images in your brain, and you're still interested, then you have a successful story. You have a successful cut. That was advice that was given to me by husband and wife, sound design team. They said, first lay it out like that, and then put images to it, because the images are just going to complement what you already have. So to do that, I had to go and I had to reteach myself how to use Adobe Premiere. Because one of the biggest weaknesses I had in this project was editors kept quitting on me. You know why? Because I couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out the story. It was too complicated. So now I could go in and I could edit my own projects. I'm not relying on anybody else. I can lay it out and see my vision the way I need to see it. So that's where the Warrior Saints webisodes were reborn. And there was a digital revolution going on at the same time, different kind. This was the internet revolution. People were watching little clips on Instagram and YouTube Reels and so on and so forth. I'm like, people are just digesting stories in very small little portions. They're not sitting there watching 4 or 5 hour movies. And then 2 other gentlemen entered my life. Well, they're already in my life, but re-entered, agreed to be part of this project. Peter Balavanian on the left and Eli Jarrah on the right. Now, Eli and I had met working on the original Space Jam, so we've known each other for 30 years. And Peter and I have known each other since I first met him during the Armenian Music Awards. Now, Peter came aboard. We used to take these long walks, especially during the Artsakh War in 2020. We'd just go for walks because it was COVID, nobody could do anything. So we hiked together trying to come up with projects. And finally I said to Peter, look, I got so much footage. I've been rewriting this thing. Why don't you come aboard and help me with this? And he jumped aboard because that kind of guy gets things done. And Eli Jarrah joined me. Eli said, you know what? I've been part of this project for so long. I want to see it end. So both organized-minded, but in very different ways. One is the big picture, one is picture specific. So here we are with Chris recording the narration. Chris and Vic Aslanian involved. Vic is a podcaster and also a music producer. One of the things that we really did to help this was we did a preliminary recording of the narration, which I used for my rough. After the rough was done, we saw what was working, what wasn't. I edited it, then we went back and re-recorded everything. Chris provided the final narration for episodes 1 and 2. We had 3 narrators in total. So Chris did a really good job and really helped develop the filmmaking process. So voiceover. Also did a bunch of art because I think pictures are very important to give you, this is like a goal. This is like, okay, this is what you're going to be shooting for. I knew I had to create a bunch of miniatures, and I needed to put that in front of everybody that was going to help me shoot it to say, this is what we're going for. So I created a bunch of really, I think attractive watercolors. And now you can see the evolution. As the watercolor becomes a foam sculpture. And the foam sculpture has plaster of Paris added to it to mold it out, and texture. And then the final paint. And then a 3D statue that's been printed out by Mark Balian. Peter was also there on set. He's not a hands-off, he's a hands-on producer. So he's a creative producer. He's there being with us. Now we had our final thing that it was repurposed so we can use it for another scene. And this is a scene where one of the scribes is writing Armenian history. So you can see that you're using something over and over. Even our logo was 3D. This is our studio space that we're working in. There's a test of a shot, the battlefield shot. I sped this up because I don't want to bore you. These are actually all on the Patreon site. They're not as fast, the narration and so on. You can go and watch them for free. But you can see what happens when you take a miniature and you film it the right way, with the right special lenses and a little bit of atmosphere smoke and so on. Miniature people, special probe lens to make a little miniature look huge. There's the final shot with the... So you can see it in context, mixing live action and miniatures together. Or putting live actors in front of a miniature. I'd like to tie everything together visually. So here I am creating these miniatures using found objects. I'm trying not to spend too much money buying a bunch of stuff. For me, it's better to recycle because I want to keep these things away from a landfill as much as possible. And again, you can see the context. So in my mind, I knew this was going to be the scene, and I would go and create it. So here we are creating the pagan temple that's going to be blown up. But of course, I couldn't blow it up in Vic's studio that he was letting me use. I don't want to burn it down. So we would do very limited effects, and we actually went to Peter's backyard, and we decided to burn Peter's backyard down. So we used black powder. It looks a lot worse than it actually is. And here we are setting up with various different kinds of cameras, various takes. So I had to learn a little bit of pyromania. I think the feds are going to come talk to me at some point in my career. I've been watching your career. You're awfully good with those wires and explosions. Okay, so Sona was pregnant when she posed for this. They're supposed to be Vartan Mamegonian's mom and dad. She's like, is it a problem? And I'm like, actually, that's supposed to be about Vartan Mamegonian's mom and dad, and now your baby can be Vartan. So that was really beautiful. Here's Vana creating Amaras. As you know, Amaras fell under Azeri occupation. So it was very important for us to show the original place where Armenian noble children would go to learn the Armenian language for the very first time. We wanted to create things in miniature because, again, we could have done this stuff with CG, but I wanted something unique. I wanted something different. If you see this project or a clip from this project on YouTube Reels, Instagram Reels, or whatever, I want the audience to know exactly what they're looking at. Like, oh yeah, it's that project. So we always add atmosphere, a smoke machine, and we created a black box situation for the miniatures. The idea is that you're looking at a manuscript book, illuminated manuscript, but it's like a sort of a glass window into another reality. We even used miniature replicas of actual people that are only about this big, 8-inch tall people, to substitute for other actors when we had to do some of these big scenes. Eli's a tech god, basically, so we totally trust him to do all this. And you can see how it's all set up, and that's the final shot. This is the funeral of Constantine the Great's father. This is before Constantine becomes emperor. So just look at that for a second. I mean, okay, you know those dolls, those 8-inch dolls. This is the stuff that used to come as like Batman and Robin when we were kids, you know. With their. So I was familiar with the world. I was familiar with this whole world that's nostalgic for my age group as well. And I said, I want to give my age group, I want to give them something nostalgic to look at too, something they're going to enjoy on a different level. So that's why I used a lot of these techniques as well. But it was also the fact that I'm not going to go out there and build an actual funeral pyre and burn a body. So I had to figure out how to do it, but do it in a non-digital fashion. We also did the various characters throughout history. That's the scope of this project. Not just Armenia, not just Persia, but Europe. Anything leading up to the Crusades. We're going to stop at the Crusades. Egypt, Africa, Mesoamerica. That's Henry playing Constantine the Great. Henry played Constantine the Great how many times? I mean, over the course of so many years. It's funny because you would see an actor get older. Yeah, we do get older, it's not a secret. And so we'd have to figure out how to place him and costume him so he would look appropriate. Green screen. Vartan saying bye-bye to Mrs. Vartan before he heads off. So that's the green screen shot. And that's the final. You can see that I've placed extra people, I created a background, I've added atmosphere. And we've had final colorization. So the final touches were smoothing out, editing, sound mixing, the sound design, which, thank you, Sylvia. Final VFX, visual effects, there were visual effects in it. Final colorization. And the key principles that I've talked about are define your project first, very important. Create a logline and tagline before you do anything else. Explain your project in an elevator to a complete stranger in 2 sentences. If you can do that, you're ahead of the game. For us, it's a riveting and unique web series about key figures of history who crossed the line between warrior and saint and changed the course of empires. I don't know, that might get someone's attention. I'm talking about my project here. Create alliances. You can't do it alone, people. I don't know why we're in this mind frame where everybody does everything by themselves now, solitary. It adds to a lot of sadness in our culture. That's a different conversation. But I had good allies. I had people who would put in with me, people who were going to bleed, roll up their sleeves, or whatever analogy you want to use. We had some long days. We had a lot of long and uncomfortable days, but these guys kept showing up. They're my brothers. I could not have done it without them. I don't mind saying that. I don't mind giving credit where credit is due. When you make a movie, you can write a novel if you want to do stuff by yourself. Maybe just work with an editor or whatever. But if you're going to make a film, you need an army. In our case, we didn't have an army, but we had the Green Beret. I'm just throwing some stuff out there. Whatever. Deal with it. So, develop and use techniques within your reach. I knew I could achieve it because I knew how to do these things. Now, Roger Corman, who, by the way, I was an extra in one of his films a long time ago. Roger Corman said this, a legendary producer. He said, don't put stunts in your movie unless you're a stuntman. Okay? Like, don't overreach, right? Because you're going to get into trouble. You're not going to be able to do it. Control the weak links. Try and stay in your own timeline as long as you can. If you're not ready, you're not ready. Don't have somebody force you to do something before you're ready to do it. If you're not ready to go to the next step with your project because you haven't figured stuff out, hang back and be ready for it. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your time, you're never going to get it back. Base your approach on the final delivery method and your own capabilities. Never oversell. Do something you would love to see. Okay, I want to talk about one last thing. I want to talk about one other circle that completed. Remember the magic envelope that I talked about? The kid, Arthur Parian, who gave me the contents of his piggy bank and said, go make this movie. It's kind of like that story from the Bible where Jesus says the widow gave just a penny, but for her, that penny was everything she had. Other people, they throw bags of gold. You know, look at me, bro, I'm the best. At the temple because they wanted to look good. He's like, those guys are not giving anything. They have tons of disposable income. She gave everything she had. He gave me everything he had at that time when he was a kid. This was a lot on me. And because, and look, this sounds cheesy, but it's true. I really believe this. Because he did that, I gave everything I had. My brothers who worked on this with me, my sisters who came in to work on this with me, they gave everything they had because of what he did. So we had an event recently where it was standing room only. We showed all the episodes. We had our costumes, we had miniatures, we had all this other stuff, invited cast members. I told Arthur's dad, Levon, who appears in my project a number of times, I said, Levon, don't tell him why, but please make sure he's going to be there. So I brought the envelope with me, and I handed it back to him. I said, thank you, Arthur. I give your magic envelope of dreams back to you. Okay, so if you want to watch the webisodes, you can go to Patreon, and the proceeds from the subscriptions will help Children of Armenia Fund. It's something we decided to do because one of our major investors is a philanthropist who loves Children of Armenia Fund. It's a great charity, and we're donating all the proceeds from the subscriptions to that. I think it's only fitting. Okay. Watch on Patreon. Now let's watch another episode. We're going to watch another episode. We're going to watch episode 6. Red Vartan, about Vartan Mamegonian. So now you've seen an episode from that graphic novel. You're going to see one from this graphic novel. And then we're going to do a Q&A with Chris and my producing partner and brother, Peter Balavanian. Okay? So hang tight.
It has been over 400 years since the birth of Christianity, and one of its defenders is about to make his last stand. In a battle against all odds, General Vartan Mamikonian is about to enter the realm of legend. Rome is still split between an eastern and western half. Both parts are now ruled by Christian emperors. The Armenian king has been deposed by the Persians, and the lands are now controlled by feudal lords who are increasing their powers. To the north, both Persia and Rome have to contend with a new deadly invasion, led by Attila the Hun. As usual, Armenians are left to face their enemies alone in this latest chapter of God's warrior saints. It is here, in places like Amaras, in the ancient Armenian highlands, that a teacher named Mesrop Mashtots, using the Armenian alphabet, translates the Bible. For the first time, students will learn scripture in their own tongue. This is an innovation that strengthens their cultural identity. Many noble children will be educated here at the Mesrobian school. The Shah of all Iranians is now Yazgerd. He is a zealot, a true patriot intent on reviving Persia's past glory. Without a king, powerful noble houses control the crossing places of trade and war. In return for self-rule, these nobles maintain armies at their own expense and are bound by treaty to defend their overlords. Among the great noble houses, there are those that soon rise above others. In this feudal world, the source of wealth is the land itself. Even the church, started by Saint Gregory, benefits from land holdings granted to it. Through marriage, the Gregorians merge with the warrior Mamikonians. Vartan is the first child born from this union of the force of arms and the power of faith. Nobles like Vartan have land holdings in both Byzantine and Persian-ruled territories. Shah Yazgerd knows it is only a matter of time before Rome projects its power over the princes in his own realm. The Persians have their own monotheistic religion, Zoroastrianism. Once practiced in Armenia, it was seen by the Shah as a countermeasure to Rome. The Shah writes a public letter accusing the Christian nobles of disloyalty and using their religion to side with Rome. They are summoned to the empire's capital to explain themselves. After much debate, a delegation is chosen, which will be led by Vartan Mamikonian on the one hand and Prince Vasak of the House of Syunik on the other. The Syunik and Mamikonian clans are historic rivals. Vasak's family is crucial to the Armenian power structure. Where the Mamikonians bring 1,000 knights to the field of battle, the Syuniks can bring 5,000. The church keeps the peace between them. This new edict by the Shah threatens that balance. A procession of nobles makes its way to Tesfon, the Persian capital. The Shah first tries bribing his guests, but they stand fast. Then Yazgerd breaks protocol and threatens the nobles with imprisonment and torture unless they renounce their Christian god. His hope is that by forcing conversion, Armenian language and customs would soon be diluted, and the nobles could then be shifted around the empire, breaking up the Armenian power structure once and for all. There is heated disagreement between the nobles. Eventually, Vasak pushes everyone to pretend to convert, so as not to leave their people without leadership. Once they are back home, he argues, they would unite their forces and stage an uprising. There is little trust between the two factions, but Vartan agrees only if Vasak swears his loyalty to the cause on the sacred book. The Shah keeps hostages to ensure obedience and sends back Zoroastrian magi, or priests, with the returning nobles. Once back, a good number of the nobles do not reclaim their Christian beliefs and remain Zoroastrian. Even though he had once encouraged rebellion, Vasak sees this as his chance to gain the upper hand over his rivals. When the people themselves rebel and drive away the Magi, the Prince of Sunik leads a combined force of Persians and loyalists to subdue the country. Realizing the danger posed by Vasak's betrayal, Vartan, a skilled general revered by both Roman and Persian alike, has to go on the march and do it fast. Vartan's forces defeat local garrisons and quickly capture important strongholds from which they take much-needed supplies and weapons. The Persians send a force to counter this threat. In a surprise move, Vartan's forces march up and attack the joint Persian invasion army at Khalkhal, causing great panic among the enemy. Many are killed during the rout. This is a shocking defeat for the imperial side. The year is 450 AD. As the weather changes, the campaign is halted and the army is sent back to their winter quarters. Vartan journeys north and makes a treaty with the Huns to open another front on the Persians when the time comes. A special envoy is sent to the Roman court to honor their treaty and come to the aid of their fellow Christians in the east. The Persian Shah is furious about Vartan's victory. He summons his advisors and generals and orders them to gather up an even mightier force, led by elite Persian troops and armor-clad war elephants. The Armenians are divided between loyalists and rebels. The stage is set for when the snows finally melt. Vartan Mamigonian and his people will face the greatest challenge of their lives. At the edge of Rome, at the gates of Persia, blood and holy water will flow.